सारे जहाँ से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा हमारा सारे जहाँ से अच्छा.
Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today is a wonderful day. I'm wishing you all in India, especially, and the Indian diaspora, a happy Independence Day. Today is, tomorrow actually, is the 77th Independence Day of India. It has been 76 years since India became independent from the British colonial Raj and has been progressing on the path of democracy and economic growth. And India's story these days is the story of the world. Everybody is talking about India, India's progression from an underdeveloped post-colonial society to a modern economy and a nuclear power. India is now the fifth biggest economy, soon to become the third biggest economy in the world. It is now the biggest country on earth in terms of population. It has surpassed China. There are more than 1.4 billion Indians just in India. And I don't know if you add the diaspora, it's pretty close to 1.5 billion people. So the story of India is the story of our times at the moment. So first, let me congratulate all of you on the Independence Day. I don't know how you celebrate it, but in the past couple of years, since I started Khanversations, I have started basically reflecting on what has transpired in the last 76 years in India. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to talk about three great achievements of India in the past 76 years, and I will talk about two major failures since independence. So, but before that, please do the needful. Number one, subscribe to Khanversations, ring the bell icon, like this video, and don't forget to share it with your friends and your social network. So the number one achievement I think that India has achieved in the last 76 years is that it was born a democracy and has remained a democracy for its entire duration. There are a couple of hitches here and there, especially during the emergency period under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, but otherwise India has been more or less in the category of democracy and struggling democracy. Lately, it has suffered some, shall we say, it has receded a little bit on certain criteria such as freedom of press, etc. But overall, India has remained a democracy, and unlike some advanced democracies like my own country, the United States, India does not have a population that is unsure about its electoral process. In America today, 50% of the country questions the legitimacy of the election every time their party loses. But for example, the last election that we saw that took place in Karnataka, nobody claimed that there was anything wrong with the elections. And so congratulations to India for maintaining the integrity of its election process and also remaining a democracy in spite of all the challenges that India faces. It is a multi-religion, multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multilingual, and a complex and a messy society with a huge population, and to just maintain the democratic infrastructure of the country is indeed a great achievement and something that other countries in the neighborhood should look forward to. India is not as good a democracy as, say, Japan and South Korea, which are much smaller and more homogeneous nations, but it is definitely way, way ahead of countries like China and Pakistan, Egypt and Iran, which are also part of its cohort. So congratulations for maintaining democracy that I think remains an enduring achievement of India in the past 76 years since independence. The second achievement that I think is remarkable and is worth talking about it is the poverty reduction and the economic growth that has taken place in India in the past 75 years. India has gone from being one of the poorest countries in the world to becoming the fifth biggest economy. Its GDP is still rising. It has still not reached middle income levels, but it's just a matter of time. The economic momentum is so strong that it is just a matter of time that India will become the third biggest economy and also probably double its per capita income within a few years. But the most remarkable economic achievement has been the reduction of poverty in India. In the past since 2005, so about the past 16 years, India has taken 415 million people out of poverty, nearly 7% of the whole world. So because India is such a big country and a large segment of the world's poorest people live in South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And so India lifting 415 million people, which is probably equal to the population of Pakistan and Bangladesh. It's like saying that in the last 16 years, India lifted Bangladesh and Pakistan entirely out of poverty. So it's that big an achievement. It is the second biggest uplifting of population after out of poverty after China. China achieved that in the 1990s. And so India's achievement is remarkable. But what is also special about it is that India has move these people out of what is called as multidimensional poverty. So they're not just talking about the fact that people have a certain income level, so they're not poor. Usually poverty is measured in terms of income per year. For example, in the United States, I think the poverty level used to be $21,000 for a family of four. So if the whole family made less than that much, then it was considered to be in absolute poverty. So it's not just about multidimensional poverty does not just measure income levels. It also looks at nutritional levels. It also looks at health levels. It also looks at educational levels. So you could be rich but uneducated. You could be poor but educated. You could be making sufficient income but unhealthy. So the idea of multidimensional poverty is essentially to measure success not on the index of GDP alone, but on the index of Human Development Index, which basically looks at all these three criteria. So congratulations again to India for this remarkable feat of removing close to 415 million people out of multidimensional poverty. What is also interesting is that this data is up to 2021. So if you look at the 3 more years, it's quite possible that in the last 20 years or in the 21st century, India has essentially taken out 500 million people out of poverty. So in the beginning, 10 years ago, 25% of the Indian population was in poverty, and now it's only 15% of the population is still in poverty. So the second achievement is about poverty reduction. The third achievement, and you will see a manifestation of that in a few days. I think Chandrayaan-3 is scheduled to land on the south pole of the moon on 23rd of August, about 8 to 9 days from now. And what is interesting is that a Russian craft is also scheduled to land in the same territory on the same day. But this third achievement is not just about landing on the moon. It is about creating a knowledge-based society. I think one of the remarkable things that India did immediately after independence was to invest in creating IITs and IIMs and engineering colleges and medical institutions and focusing broadly in colleges. India, in the last 76 years, has established over 1,000 universities and colleges, and it needs much, much more. But the fact is that it has never given up or forgotten the importance of education and continues to invest in education. Not only is the government investing in education, but the private sector is also. In fact, some of the best schools are private schools. So the society, by and large, is focused on imparting knowledge. I mean, one of the goals that the Prime Minister of India talks about is about making India Vishwaguru, which is to become the knowledge leaders in this world. And in a few areas, India certainly has done that. India produces the second largest number of engineers and I think doctors also after China, but it produces the largest number of MBAs, I think, now. So India is producing people who are professionally qualified and is providing a management and scientific workforce, not just to India, but to the rest of the world. So Indians are working in Europe, are working in the United States, in Canada, in Africa, in Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia. There's no place on earth that you cannot go, especially in the Middle East, for example, where you will not find Indian engineers or doctors or managers or workforce. So the fact that India is able to supply to the world itself, highly qualified and skilled and educated workforce is indeed a major, major achievement. And it is not just that they are just providing people with adequate knowledge. Many of these people are excelling. So you can see how the Indian diaspora dominates in certain industries, especially IT, medicine, management, and engineering. And these things are important because these are the drivers of global economy today. It's not as if India is dominating in an industry which is marginal. If you were to use a sporting analogy, India is dominating in cricket and not in, say, I don't know what, checkers or kabaddi or something like that. It's dominating in the main industries that drive global economy. So that is India's three great achievements since 1947. And I hope and pray that it continues to grow at the same pace, if not faster, and continues to emphasize knowledge, poverty reduction. There's still a large segment of the Indian population which needs to be lifted out of poverty and continues to preserve and safeguard its democracy. I want to talk about two failures of India. Number one is that India in 76 years has failed to resolve its border issues with its neighbors, especially China and Pakistan. There have been resolutions with Bangladesh, but you will see that the Bangladeshi border is called as the killing fields or the death border, with lots of people being killed on the border. So there are border issues, there are territorial disputes as well as border issues that India has not been able to resolve. In fact, the fact that India continues to have significant territorial disputes with both Pakistan and China, who are both nuclear powers, and India has fought at least 4 wars with Pakistan and 1 with China. It is a diplomatic failure, but one has to also recognize that this is not a drum that can be beaten from one side. It has to be beaten from both sides. And so this is a collective failure. It is also Pakistan's failure that it has not been able to resolve its border issues with its neighbors, both Afghanistan and India. And China continues to have border issues, not just with India, but it seems to be involved in border dispute with more than, I think, 13 to 14 countries. So while this is not entirely a failure of Indian government or the Indian ruling elite or the Indian population, but nevertheless, it is still, I think, a problem and a failure that these issues should have been resolved much earlier. They impede on progress and development. They distract from focusing on making yourself better because you're so focused on protecting your borders. So I think one failure, I wouldn't say that this is the most important failure, but this is one failure that I want to highlight this year, is that India has still pending issues on the border which needs to be resolved. They need to be resolved on a priority basis. And I think that India's movement towards becoming a global leader and a dominant power are being checked by these border issues. And the second failure that I want to point out is that in spite of India being a democratic society, in spite of the fact that pluralism is an important virtue and value in India, there is still the question about domestic harmony. Even as we speak, there are many states which are witnessing domestic violence. Manipur is burning, Haryana was burning last week. And when we listen and when we critique the government of our times and saying, why aren't you able to handle these issues? The response usually is, oh no, this is very common in India. Look at Rajasthan, look at Bengal. Apparently, there is violence and domestic disharmony in not just these two states, but in many states. And that is a question that will continue to haunt India in the last few months, especially with Manipur and with prime ministers' travels to foreign countries. There has been a greater scrutiny, international scrutiny on India's domestic issues. And if India is going to go and present itself as a world leader, as a Vishwa Guru that people should follow and emulate, then it'll have to get its domestic society in order. And let me tell you, without any reservation, that the quality of a democracy is directly in proportion to the security and safety that its minorities experience. So you can't have a democracy for only one aspect of one segment of the society. The democratic dividend should be shared by all. And so similarly, prosperity and freedoms also should be shared by all people, regardless of their caste, their religion, or their class. So I think these are two issues that are like anchors on India as it seeks to rise higher and higher. The two weights that are pulling down is domestic disharmony, a lot of hate speech, a lot of violence. The police and law and order are not seen as being fair. So all of these issues are pulling India down, besides the border issue. So there's insecurity on the border, insecurity coming from outside, and there's insecurity even inside. So basically, India has to work on these two issues, and then sky is the limit for India. It has a very young population. It has a huge working class people with great skills and decent education. So India is capable of providing a really vital economy, and India could become the growth engine of the world. So on this positive note, I will say goodbye to all of you. There are lots of interesting shows that I have planned. There are two long interviews, one about Pakistan with barrister Hamid Bashani, and there is another one with Dr. Amirullah Khan from Hyderabad that I will definitely be hosting. There is one more show which has not yet been recorded or confirmed, so I don't want to share, but there will be two, inshallah, hopefully, important guests talking about India's progress and development since 1947. So please watch all of them, share them with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and once again, happy Independence Day to India and to the Indian diaspora all over the world.